Places. The date is February 18th, 2025. My name is Chair Lindsay Rulon-Miller, and I'm currently the chair of the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board. And I would like to pass it over to Deputy SHPO Amy Spong.
Thank you, Chair Rulon-Miller. Good evening, everyone. I'm Amy Spong. As Chair Rulon-Miller said, I'm the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, and I want to welcome our board members. It's been several months that we've seen you, so this is our first meeting of 2025. Welcome the nomination authors, writers, and members of the public that are participating here. We appreciate having everyone at this meeting. A couple housekeeping items before we jump into our agenda. This meeting does follow the state of Minnesota's open meeting requirements as a virtual meeting under Minnesota Statute 13D. No one is in person at the meeting tonight, and there are no board members are gathered in the same room, and the meeting is being recorded. Because of this meeting format, we ask that board members have your microphones muted when you are not speaking and to have your cameras on when you are speaking. We want to make sure that everyone can hear one another and that members of the public are able to hear all of the board discussion and all of the verbal responses. All votes will be taken this evening by verbal roll call. Everyone here clearly has already found the meeting link to join in, but for the record, the meeting announcement and related information are available on the State Review Board webpage of the SHPO's website. SHPO staff and Chair Rulon-Miller will be watching the chat function. For any members of the public that are present, please use the chat for questions and to request time to speak regarding a nomination. Don't use it for any testimony. We really just want to keep that chat to being asked to speak, or if you have a question, or if you're having some technical issues. You can also use raising your hand using the icon as well, and we have staff that will be monitoring that throughout this meeting. And before we jump in and introduce and take roll call with the board, I just want to introduce the SHPO staff that we have in attendance this evening, which is essentially our National Register team. We have Lillian Egner, who is taking our minutes and monitoring things. Many of you already know John Disher, who's hosting the WebEx meeting, and if you've got any technical issues, he would be one to help out with that. And then we have Jenny Way, our National Register architectural historian, and David Mather is our National Register archaeologist. Okay, I'll have a few more announcements at later part in the agenda, but just wanted to get through some of those meeting specifics. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Amy. I might have a little bit of repeat of what Amy shared regarding the chat, so just bear with me. You'll get extra info. Okay, our purpose this evening is to consider the nomination of properties to the National Register of Historic Places. As most of you know, the National Register of Historic Places is a federal list of those places deemed worthy of preservation. A nomination form has been completed for the properties that will be considered tonight. The nomination form has been sent to the review board members, and each member has had an opportunity to study it prior to this meeting. The owners of nominated properties, local officials, and interested local groups have been notified of this meeting. All have been invited to send written comments about the nomination and to attend the meeting. Some of you may wish to speak this evening about the properties. You are welcome to do so, and I encourage you to address yourself to the question of whether that property meets the criteria established by the National Register of Historic Places. These criteria are the standards by which the review board will evaluate the nomination. This evaluation is the board's only assignment. These criteria have been established by federal regulation. Copies of the criteria have been sent to owners of the nominated properties, and to the other properties I mentioned earlier, the other parties I mentioned earlier. A description of the National Register of Historic Places program has also been sent to them. The nominations will be presented by a staff member. Persons viewing the meeting remotely will then be given an opportunity to comment. These comments should be limited to 3 minutes. The Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board will then discuss the nominations and a vote by the board will follow. Should a nomination be determined this evening to meet the criteria for inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places, the nomination will be forwarded to the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, Amy Spong. Should she agree that the property meets the criteria and that the nomination is in proper form, she will sign the nomination and forward it to the National Register of Historic Places office in Washington, D.C., where it will be reviewed once more. The process is a lengthy one, but it is calculated to subject each property to rigorous evaluation. Board members, if you plan to recuse yourself from a particular agenda item this evening, please make that known during roll call. When that item is introduced, please turn off your camera and microphone. When the discussion and vote has concluded, I will ask you to rejoin the meeting. As I take attendance, please introduce yourselves, briefly stating the role you fill on the review board and your particular expertise. So for roll call alphabetically, we will start with board member Anderson.
I'm Kristen Anderson. I fill one of the architectural historian spots on the board.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Board member Gladhill.
I'm Bethany Gladhill, and I'm a member at large.
Thank you. Board member James.
Board member James.
Board member James.
Board member James is not here.
Okay, thank you. Board member Lavasser.
I'm Andrea Lavasser. I'm retired from the Chippewa National Forest up here in Bemidji, Minnesota. And I was the forest archaeologist and heritage program manager for the forest. And I worked in consultation with the Leech Lake Reservation, which is co-located with the forest. And we managed about 3,000 archaeological sites and a couple dozen historic buildings, including the Rabideau CCC Camp National Historic Landmark, which has 13 buildings of its own. That's about it for me.
Thank you. Board member Olson.
Hi, my name's Steve Olson. I'm a practicing civil engineer and a member at large.
Thank you. Board member Radford.
Hi, I'm Casey Radford. I'm a historical architect in Minneapolis, and I fill one of the seats for historic architect.
Thank you. Board member Sanders.
My name is Tom Sanders, and I'm a board member at large. I'm retired from the Minnesota Historical Society, where I was the blacksmith at Fort Snelling for 10 years, and then for another 18 years I was the site manager at Jeffers Petroglyphs. My expertise is in archaeology and historic trades.
Thank you. Board member Schulke.
Hi, I'm Chris Schulke, Director of the Otter Tail County Historical Society, and I'm one of your local historians.
Thank you. Board member Solomonson, I believe is out tonight. Okay, board member Stark.
Hi, I'm John Stark, and I'm a historic architect on the board and an architect in the Twin Cities area, but recently retired.
Thank you. Board member Terrell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Terrell. I am an archaeologist and historian and co-owner of Two Pines Resource Group. I serve the board in the role of the historical archaeologist.
Thank you. Board member White.
My name is Frank White, and I'm a Member at Large.
Thank you. Board Member Worcester.
Mike Worcester, I'm the Executive Director of the Morrison County Historical Society in Little Falls, and my role on the board is also as a local historian.
Thank you. And I am Board Member Chair Rulon Miller, Lindsay. And I am member at large, and I work at the Minnesota Historical Society in Capital and Public Art. All right, thank you everybody for introducing yourself. And then I would like to pass it back to Deputy Amy Spong and the SHPO staff regarding any updates. Amy?
Great, thank you, Chair Rulon Miller. I have a few more announcements before we jump into our presentations for nominations this evening, so bear with me. First of all, congratulations, Board Member Stark, on your recent retirement. That's a wonderful, very long career in architecture. I wanted to also let everyone know of our recent National Register listings that have been confirmed by the Keeper of the National Register. We have the Henrik and Mari Oskam House in Hennepin County, the Ole and Ann Foss House in Otter Tail County, Heymanicha Barn Bluff in Goodhue County. The original State Review Board meeting was in 2023, so some of you may not have been on the board when that was first reviewed. And then the St. Joseph's Nurses Home in Ramsey County, and that original State Review Board date was 2021. So it was really good to see some of those listings actually get confirmed by the Keeper of the National Register. A couple more announcements. We have a new hire who just started in the last few weeks in our office, and that's Barbara Howard. Some of you may recognize her name. She actually was the former deputy SHPO in Minnesota here. She was my predecessor, and her role is going to be, she is the architectural historian for the environmental review program. So she will be kind of working on eligibility determinations for those projects reviews that come from state and federal agencies, namely known as Section 106 and the National Historic Preservation Act. So she and Ginny will be working closely, as well as a couple of our other SHPO team members that also meet federal qualifications as architectural historians. So we are very pleased to have Barbara on our team and to be, working on architectural history and historian work as well. And then two more, thanks for your patience. I did want to also recognize David Mather brought up a couple speaking engagements that a couple of our board members have, but I wanted to let everybody know that Board Member White is being honored by the St. Paul City Council this week. It's Wednesday already, that's tomorrow, at 3:30, being recognized at the St. Paul City Council for his historian work, mostly with baseball and Black history. And so congratulations, Frank. I'm gonna check my calendar. I'd love to come down and see you be honored by the council, but just wanted to recognize Frank for that. So were you gonna take yourself off mute for a second?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. And I'm
absolutely.
honored.
Yeah, yes, you should be. That's really a wonderful recognition to have. And then finally, so the staff, we've all been kind of talking, we've been talking about, figuring out if we can move to more of a hybrid meeting situation. We want to make sure that board members who would still be watching, participating virtually, that they still feel very much a part of the process. That includes our public meeting participants as well. So we're still talking about that, but we thought as maybe another kind of trial run option would be to do just have a once a year in-person meeting for the whole board, and a time where we can all come together. And then we thought, well, to make it maybe worthwhile for those traveling a little bit farther, we could plan some kind of a group field trip, outing, tour, something that our office is working on. So we wanted to bring this idea to the board. You can think on it a little bit, but we'd love to get your feedback. One of the thoughts we had was to try for this May to be our in-person meeting. And of course, we would still offer the hybrid option for those that couldn't make it to St. Paul. But we would just plan for our May meeting to be in person. And we thought as our kind of afternoon maybe gathering that we could show the board what SHPO and the statewide survey oversight board has been administering, which is the Capitol Mall context study and evaluation, both for above ground and below ground work. And so that was one of the ideas that we could do. It'd be kind of an easy field trip to plan since it's right on it's Capitol Mall and the Capitol area. And so that was one of the ideas that we thought of. So we'd love to get your feedback on that. If board members would be willing to do that, I think it'd be nice to get all of us together. Even if it is just for one meeting a year that we can do that, and the public could also participate in person or virtually as well. So that's the idea we had. We thought May is nice. It's not cold like February, and we never know what February is going to be like. But also May is National Preservation Month, and so it kind of coincides nicely with that. And so we thought maybe that'd be another good way to kind of celebrate Preservation Month and the work that the board does
Amy,
together.
what day is that again?
Gosh, now you're testing me.
Come on
May
now.
11th or 12th? I might have to look to Lillian
All right.
or Jenny for
Lillian,
that.
what day is that?
I have to double check our list too.
Oh, man.
Let's see. That will be for 2025, May 20th.
Oh, okay, I was way off.
Yep.
May
Thank
20th. I
you.
know it can be tough too, but it's also kind of end of legislative session, can be a little bit of a busy time for everyone. But let us know what your thoughts are. Feel free to email Lillian, Jenny, give us a call, whatever way is easiest to reach out. We'd love to get board members' feedback. So, or if you have any initial thoughts at the moment, I'm happy to hear those too. Okay, hearing none, I will pass it back to Chair Rulon Miller. Thanks,
I'm
everyone.
sorry, I hate to interrupt. This is Jenny. Board member Worcester has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that.
Well, I don't want to, drag this conversation out, but I've been an advocate of us as a group meeting at least once a year in person, just so we can, if for no other reason, actually visually be in the same room together. I don't think that hurts anything at all. And yeah, May's as good a month as any, so why not? I just, this board used to meet in person every quarter, and COVID kind of put a stop to that. So it'd be nice to get back to at least once a year. Just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, thank you. Great. And I forgot to prompt, do any of the SHPO staff have any other announcements that I may have missed? Nope.
And Amy
All right.
and board members, we can nudge you when we send our follow-up email to get feedback about the potential May meeting.
Thank you, Lillian. All right, now Chair Rulon Miller.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm personally excited about an in-person meeting, and hopefully you are all too. It'll be beautiful weather. We'll be able to walk around and have the sun kiss our face. It'll be wonderful. Also, hello to board member Gladhill's buddy that I see. All right. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the review of the minutes from the November 12th, 2024 meeting. Are there any corrections to the distributed minutes? All right, if no corrections, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Board Member Schulte, so moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Board Member Terrell, second.
Thank you. Now we will vote by roll call to approve the minutes, starting with Board Member Anderson.
Board Member Anderson, I abstain.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Board Member Gladhill votes aye.
Thank you. Board Member Lavasser.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Board Member Olson.
I vote aye.
Thanks. Board Member Radford.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Board Member Sanders.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Thanks. Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member White.
Aye.
Thank you. And Board Member Worcester.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye. So minutes have been approved. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the presentation of nominations with some instruction. For our nominations this evening, we're going to use the following format. There'll be a staff presentation of the nominations followed by a summary of correspondence received. At that point, I will then invite and call on those who would like to speak about the specific property. We ask that you use the chat function, or if you are unable to access the chat, raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please do not use the chat function for any other purpose. For those wishing to speak, we'd ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. And our first nomination for this evening is the Edna G. Tugboat Relocation in Lake County, presented by Ginny Way. Ginny, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chair Rulon Miller. I did not practice this morning or this afternoon. John, can you walk me through sharing my screen? I do not have it in the typicals. Never mind. Never mind.
Did you find it?
Just like I did, and I just really enjoy having this recorded for everyone to see forever. Okay. Forgive me. Our first nomination this evening is the Tugboat Edna G. relocation into Harbors, Lake County. Thomas V. Kohler is the author. He is a member of the Edna G. Commission with the City of Two Harbors. Oh, goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on just one second. I have shared the wrong thing. Okay. Now maybe. Oh, gracious. Sorry, my notes have all of a sudden gone away with the way the presentation is sharing, which is going to make it very interesting for all of us, I'm afraid. Hang with me. John, are you seeing the tugboat by itself, or are you seeing a notes page? All right, hearing nothing, I'm going to start again. So this is the
Ginny?
first, yeah.
It's Kristen. We
Hi,
saw the
Kristen.
tugboat. Hi,
Okay,
Ginny. We
perfect.
saw the
Hi.
tugboat. Hi.
Thanks.
Mhm.
We only have 7 tonight, y'all. It's going to be fine. It's not quite 7. Sorry. Okay. So this is the first of 2 slightly different agenda items before the board this evening. As I will discuss, the Edna G's significance is already established by the National Park Service. The question before the board is whether or not the documentation sufficiently justifies the need to relocate the Edna G, and if the tug would have sufficient integrity to convey its established historic significance in the new location. The tugboat Edna G was built by Cleveland Shipbuilding of Cleveland,
Say,
Ohio.
Jenny?
And, uh-huh.
At first we saw your presentation and then it went away. And for
Oh,
me, I'm
good.
not seeing it right now. I don't know if anybody else is.
No, I
Was-
just
it
see
was
Jenny
there.
too.
The Edna G is so much
Okay,
more
now we-
interesting than
Now
me.
we see
Okay.
the tugboat. Thank you.
Yeah? Okay.
Edna
We're
is
gonna have-
back.
We're going to have to figure out how to edit this in post, John. Okay. The tugboat Edna G was built by Cleveland Shipbuilding of Cleveland, Ohio in 1896 to assist ore carriers into and out of ore dock slips in Agate Bay, Lake Superior. Of all steel construction from the keel to the roof of the pilot house, the riveted hull measures some 102 feet in length at the waterline and 23 feet in width at midship. Here's a photograph of the Edna G when approaching on foot, view from the west. The tug was listed in the National Register in 1975 for its significance as a, quote, historic Great Lake vessel that is still operating within its intended environment, end quote. The vessel is currently moored in the historic location in Agate Bay, Lake Superior. Here is the Edna G at the time of listing, looking southwest with the ore docks in the background. The Code of Federal Regulation CFR 60.14B1 states that a property listed in the National Register should only be moved when, quote, there is no feasible alternative for preservation, end quote. It goes on to say that when a property is moved, quote, every effort should be made to reestablish its historic orientation, immediate setting, and general environment, end quote. 36 CFR 60.14B2 states that the documentation should be submitted to the National Park Service prior to the move and must discuss, quote, the reason for the move, the effect on the property's integrity, the new setting and general environment of the proposed site, and photos of the proposed location, end quote. Documentation meeting this requirement is what the board reviewed in preparation for this meeting. At left is a view of the Edna G at its current moored location. At right is an aerial view of the ore docks and Agate Bay. The Edna G is indicated with the yellow box. The ore docks and an ore ship are on the south and west of the tug. The park site proposed as the new location is north of the tug. As a moored vessel, the Edna G is constantly subjected to the corrosion, wind, waves, and ice of Lake Superior. Continued deterioration of the tug has been documented for more than a decade. Because the Edna G will continue to need constant repair if she remains in the water, there is no feasible alternative to preservation. Here we see a panoramic view of the hillside of Van Hoven Park and the proposed new location of the tug at center, as seen from the lake. The new location maintains the integrity and aspects of setting, feeling, and association. Paul Van Hoven Park, named for the former president of the railroad, was historically owned by the DM and IR Railroad. The parcel was formerly an active industrial railroad property. The orientation and compass bearing of the tug will mirror the position when moored to its dock. Its display treatment could include the representation of the dock, plus mooring bollards and mooring lines, as it had in the water. Because the park slopes drastically from the parking area to the access drive, the perspective mimics the view of the tug in the water. On the left is a satellite view of the tug at her dock mooring below, and a proposed view of the tug on land above, mirroring its moored position. On right is an approximation of the tug and the proposed support cradle on land. SHPO staff concluded that there is little to no potential for a, quote, intact archaeological site based on review of historical and modern maps, end quote. The potential relocation site on shore is heavily disturbed. Currently, no above-ground evidence of the previous use can be observed. Standing structures depicted in the 1892 and 97 Sanborn fire insurance maps are no longer extant. SHPO concludes the proposed site does not contain historical or archaeological resources. Here we see an approximation of the tug's appearance as seen by a person in Van Hoven Park. In keeping the tugboat Edna G in its current location, the water will lead to its destruction through the dynamic action of Lake Superior. Relocating the tug to land is the best way to preserve the property. Dry docking or mounting the tug will allow for repair of damaged materials, maintenance of historic materials, and allow more visitors to explore the property. The new location does not adversely affect another historic property, and it is an appropriate location for the move tug as the environment and immediate setting will remain the same. The city has stated every effort will be made to retain the docked orientation. There is no correspondence related to this relocation request. Chair Rulon Miller.
Thank you, Jenny. John, is there anybody who has signed up to speak on behalf of the tugboat?
We have nobody signed up.
Okay. I am scanning the chat and looking for any hands raised. Okay, I see Patty. I think you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Patty Nordine, and I'm the administrator for the City of Two Harbors. And I have an image that I'd like to share of the Edna G that it just brings it into more perspective. If I can share that with you. Let's see.
I think John may have to give you host.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
We got it.
Can you see that? I just thought it was a great photo to share with you to gain perspective of the size of the tug with relation to the people that you see standing next to it, and just would help you with a idea of what it would look like potentially on ground. I mean,
Thank you, Patty.
that's all I have.
Thank you. I see a hand from Tom Kohler. Tom, go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I've been a volunteer on the Tug Commission for the past dozen years or more, working hand in hand with Administrator Nordine and other city officials. I check the tug on a regular basis, especially now with bubblers in the water to keep ice away from the hull. There is not only electrolytic corrosion acting on the hull, but also a biologic type of corrosion which actually pierces the hull. It is in fact pierced now, and it is the suspended material in the water which acts kind of like stop leak to mitigate the water infiltration into the tug's build. I do check it on a regular basis, probably 2 or 3 times a week. There has been severe storm activity traditionally in the November when we have a turnover in the environmental conditions in the area. There's about a 230-mile long fetch of wind blowing from the northeast to the southwest along the length of the lake, and it funnels right down onto the tug. It tosses around so violently that it has twice severed a new 1.5 inch nylon mooring line, which cannot even be cut with an ordinary knife without great effort. And it's torn just from the effects of the violence of the storm. The hull does show some effects of the battering against the dock. We've had to put additional fenders on the dock just to protect the hull. Bringing it to the shipyard in Duluth or Superior would involve about a roughly a 30-mile lake voyage and running the risk of being lost during the tow to the shipyard and then a subsequent tow from the shipyard back to Two Harbors. Some tugs have been lost already from this towing process. Other tugs in the Duluth Harbor have sunk near their docks just from the effects of entropy and storm. And so it is imperative that this tug that has helped build and defend this country be hauled out of the water if it is to be protected. Experts in the field have declared this tug to be the very finest example of end of the 19th century shipbuilding technique and steam engine building technique, both performed in the Cleveland shipyard. The tug is in the best possible condition of any of the other surviving 19th century tugs that are still in existence in the Great Lakes area. I should stop while I'm ahead. I've been working on this for the last dozen years. It is imperative that this tug be hauled out of the water. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. All right, any other hands up? I don't see any other hands up from our participating public. All right, so seeing as no hands are up or nothing in the chat, I'll close the public comment period. And in order for us to discuss as a board, may I have a motion regarding this nomination? Board Member Olson?
I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing or relocation of the property for the National Register of Historic Places.
Board
Thank
Member
you very
White was
much.
sec- Board Member White was second.
Thank you, Frank. All right, it's moved and is seconded. Are there any comments? I see Board Member Terrell.
Yeah, excuse me. I support the relocation of the Edna G. I think it's very important that we save this this tug while we can. But I do have concerns about the archaeological potential of the relocation site. SHPO staff assessed it as significantly disturbed or heavily disturbed. I took a look at the area and it hasn't been significantly altered since the 1939 aerial photograph was flown. In 1914, the tug boarding house and the cook dwelling that supported this tug were on the flat area immediately below the hillside. And I'm concerned too that there might be pre-contact archaeology on the upland portion where sort of the nose of the tug is planned. So I would like to offer an amendment to the motion that with the amendment being pending confirmation through archaeological investigation that the proposed site does not contain significant below ground resources.
Thank you. So are we proposing an amendment to the motion? And Ginny, would you like to help me through if we continue discussing and then?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through this on my feet. Board Member Terrell, I understand where you're coming from. Lucy Harrison in our office took a look at this, and so she is the one that made the recommendation about the archaeological work, and I would be happy to reconvene with both she and David to make sure that we have done the work that we need in order to assess that this property does not disturb an archaeological information. David, I might lean on you a little bit here. The National Register regulations say that the property cannot disturb a National Register listed site or eligible site, which is slightly different than existing archaeological material, I guess is going to be my terrible way to say that. And I apologize, I'm stumbling through this. I'm a buildings person. And so, David, I'm going to lean on you a little bit about how we might move through this, because I'm not sure that we can require archaeological investigation from a board movement. But I'm picking up what you're laying down, Board Member Terrell, and I want to make sure that we get what you need in order to move this forward comfortably. David, do you have anything
Yeah,
here?
no, thank you for that, and thank you, member Terrell. Yeah, I'll touch base with Lucy and talk over, what her review entailed and look into it. This is a very important issue, and we'll get it figured out.
So perhaps, Board Member Terrell, we could adjust your motion to, or your amendment, friendly amendment to the motion to perhaps say that we would forward the relocation information pending review of the archaeological assessment by the State Historic Preservation Office staff, understanding that if we find concerns with further investigation, that the documentation would need to be updated and we would address whatever the appropriate next step is at that time. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I can support that, withdraw my motion. I think it's very important that we don't inadvertently impact a potential National Register site through our actions. There's really no substitution for, unless there's gun sort of aerial photograph or LiDAR imagery where we can really see that this area has just been completely chewed up. To substitute that review for actual physical testing. I see Tom's comment about the industrialization of this area. The Sanborn maps, though, don't show trackage in this particular location from the railroad. I realize that, yes, there's the roundhouse and a significant yard in Two Harbors, but this particular area seems to sort of been uniquely set aside because of the tug operations and things, and there's dwellings and stuff in the area where the park was. So I appreciate, Ginny, with your revised motion, and I'm comfortable with that.
Chair Rulon Miller, do you, shall we restate
yeah.
the motion and the amendment?
Yeah, so presently we have the motion on the table. And then are we currently adding Board Member Terrell's friendly amendment to the motion? Otherwise, we can go back and have a withdrawal of the original motion and then propose the new one with the new language.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Board Member Worcester?
Thank you. I'm sorry to be the annoying parliamentarian here, but if you're going to have an amendment to a motion, you need to have that amendment seconded and approved. And then your original motion needs to be restated as amended. But I'm not sure if I heard Board Member Terrell say she withdrew the amendment. Did I misunderstand that?
I requested to withdraw my amendment.
Okay.
Because Ginny had put one forward. Thank you.
Okay. We need to just be careful. And the other question I have then as a part of that is, are we allowed to make amendments to these motions, or do they have to stand as is because of what is being asked here? And what seems to me being asked is we want to dig some more, right? Potentially dig some more, sorry.
What I think what we're trying to seek is a way to ensure, to the best of our abilities, that the relocation of the tug in the place that they have suggested will not negatively affect any National Register eligible property, specifically archaeological properties that could be present. I cannot propose an amendment. I am not a board member. However, I did suggest language that could be introduced as an amendment since Board Member Terrell, yours was withdrawn. And I do that. I suggest new language only because this body does not have the authority to request or require an archaeological assessment. So the State Historic Preservation Office can take that next step with requestment or requirement, but my suggestion is the board give us the information or give us the directive to do that further investigation.
Thank you, Ginny. It might be helpful for me to see the amendment that the language that you shared. I didn't write it down, and so that I can repeat it for the board, and then they can decide whether or not they want to make the amendment.
I'm just trying to remember it. The proposed language or the suggested language was that the friendly amendment direct the State Historic Preservation Office staff to re-examine the potential for archaeological evidence of National Register eligible properties within the location of the proposed location of the tug. I was better the first time. David, do you have anything to say here?
One question I had, and forgive me if this was said, but what is the schedule proposed for the move?
Tom, I would look to you for that. At this point, I don't have a schedule.
Jenny, here's what I was able to gather. So the friendly amendment being direct the SHPO staff to re-examine the potential for archaeology. Finish my sentence with that.
Board Member Terrell, would you like to finish that sentence? I think you probably have the best language.
So we have our motion. So I had pending SHPO's review of the archaeological potential of the area where the relocation will take place. And I realize in saying this too, that the city, just by state rules, will have to examine that as well.
They will. So this property, this is also will be also a part of a 138 state regulatory process, but the National Register regulations require that the new location not displace or harm any National Register eligible properties. So this is well within our rights to discuss here at the office or at this meeting. I'm sure you knew that, but I want to make sure I'm stating it.
All right, there are so many hands up. We'll get to you, but I just wanted to address the potential motion that was to make a friendly amendment to direct the SHPO staff to re-examine for potential archaeological potential of the area of the proposed relocation. If somebody would like to make a motion to add that friendly amendment, you are welcome to do so now or later.
Can I offer a first to whatever you said there, Lindsay? Instead of a second, it would be a first?
Yes, it would be a second. Or I'm sorry, a first. Thank you. Are you offering?
I am offering a first.
A first. Okay, so now is there a second to the friendly amendment?
Board Member Gladhill seconds.
Gladhill seconds. All right. Thank you. So now let's go. I think I have an order of, we're going to go Olson, Stark, Radford, and start with there. Okay, so Board Member Olson.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking about the ramifications below grade, but I'm guessing the people in Two Harbors can be crafty people and do a low impact type of support system for the structure. But I just wanted to recognize the city of Two Harbors that there's very little 1890s steel in an outdoor environment still present in the state. So they've done a good job taking care of the resource to bring it forward this far in time. And so I just wanted to recognize that and say, good job with your resource.
Thank you. Board Member Stark.
Yeah, I like what they're doing here. I really like this process of having to be reviewed. I don't recall doing this before, the approval process and changing it to be out of that. So it's good to see how this works. A question for Jenny probably is, there was a discussion, a pier may be built or something leaving in the future, and the context of that affects it. Is there a review process that National Park Service approves this at the end of it, and then it becomes finally approved, or how's that work?
Yeah, so there are two processes that are going to take place because this is a publicly owned resource. Thank you, Board Member Stark. So the first process is during the move, prior to the move, because the property is owned by the City of Two Harbors, they will work with our office through the Environmental Review Program and the State Law 138 to ensure that the relocation of the tug meets the Secretary of the Interior standards, and our office and one of our design reviewers will be the one that guides them through that. So that process takes place between the National Register processes, the first being this state, which asks permission. And then the second part of the documentation is basically proving that they did what they said they were going to do, and a final approval, which will continue the listing. So this step ensures the listing continues through the move. And then the National Park Service, once we submit paperwork showing the tug in its new location with its new mooring and whatever other interpretation they choose to put on there, will ensure that it is either listed, or the National Park Service could, of course, disagree with the decisions made and choose to delist it.
This would be similar if it was a building or something to a different, similar case. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Regardless of the resource,
So-
the process is the same.
So Jenny, given what you just shared to John's question, is it necessary then for this second part of the motion?
Yes,
If it's going to be checked
because
anyway.
well, it was checked. So our staff, the State Historic Preservation Office staff, did review the space, the area for archaeological potential, but Board Member Terrell brought forth additional evidence that lets us know that perhaps we need to check a little farther. This is why we have such a wonderful group of experts to help us, because despite all of our incredible work that we do here at the SHPO, not to toot our own horns, we do rely on your expertise when things are overlooked accidentally. So because the national park, the idea that a moved property cannot negatively affect another historic property is within the regulations, then it is well within this board's purview to discuss whether or not we believe, or y'all believe, that documentation and that statement has been fully supported and substantiated. In this case, the board may or may not choose. The amendment on the floor is whether or not the documentation substantiates the statement that no historic properties will be affected by the move. And so here we are. Short answer, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Radford. Thank you for your patience.
Of course. Archaeological resource potential aside, I just wanted to say that I thought this was a very thoughtful relocation exercise. It's very well placed, in my opinion, based on its historic location or its listed location. I did have a question and or comment on the future maintenance once it's relocated, if that's relevant here. And my question is that what I'm going to call the north side that's against the hill, is that going to be completely buried and inaccessible for future maintenance? Or will it be wide open so it will be accessible? And then second, just is there a maintenance plan, or just think about that moving forward, since this is such a unique piece of history? That's all.
Thank you, Board Member Radford. I'm not sure if Tom or the member of city staff are interested in addressing the potential for maintenance and the ability to go around, but our understanding is that you will be able to walk entirely around the tug.
Patty's had her hand up. Patty, would you like to address?
Yes, thank you. I can respond to that. It's my understanding that the intention is to leave it so that we can maintain it all the way around. it is yet to be engineered, and that we held off on engineering the whole thing until we got your approval. I mean, we have some general concept in mind of how we're going to do this, and thus you see the drawing. But we think it's important to allow for that continued maintenance. So it is our intention to leave that side open so that we can do that maintenance from both the interior and exterior of the tug. And someone else had asked about a timeline. We really don't have one at this point because, first of all, it has to be engineered on how we're going to safely and effectively move this huge vessel without causing any damage. So we've got people looking at it already, but we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and pay for a whole big engineering study before we had the approval to do something. So, and in addition to that, we have some fundraising to do. So once we get approval, we'll move forward with the engineering, and it will give us an estimate of how much funds we need to raise. And we have an active group that is interested in doing the fundraising for us. So we have thought this out in advance. It's just not, we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Tom Kohler, if you have a brief response, I see your hand is up, and then we'll move back to board discussion. Tom?
There is adequate space all the way around the tugboat as the display is planned. There is a fund in existence for continual maintenance and repair of the tug. There is a body of volunteers available to do the work. Plus, every fourth person in town is a welder if there's any metal work that needs to be done on the tug. So the ongoing maintenance has been considered and arranged for. The design was deliberately to allow adequate space all the way around the tug, both for free airflow, good drainage, and safe access to the hull in every dimension. Was the question addressed?
It was for
I
me, yes.
believe so.
Thanks, Tom and Patty.
Thank you, Patty. I see one more final comment from you, Patty.
I do. The city has a portion of our local lodging tax that is committed to the maintenance of the Edna G. So we have a fund that will continue, that'll continue to receive funds moving forward for the maintenance.
Thank you. All right, board member Gladhill.
This is picky compared to all the bigger things we're doing, but if I could just ask SHPO staff to do one more run, assuming we approve this before it goes into the keeper, for some typos and grammar elements. There's a few misspellings and elements that I'd love to get cleaned up. And I can send those on to you, Jenny, if you want.
Please do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And board member Stark, do you have a new comment? Hand is still up. All right. Good. Okay. All right. Thank you, board members, for your discussion. Are there any more hands or comments to make? Otherwise, I can go ahead and read the motion as it stands. Other comments? All right, the motion is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Office approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places with the friendly amendment to direct the SHPO staff to re-examine the archaeological resource potential of the proposed relocation site. I think that's a mouthful. All right, so if you're all ready, we can vote. All right, let's start with board member Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Board member Gladhill.
Aye.
Thank you. Board member Lavasser.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Board member Olson.
Aye.
Thank you. Board member Radford.
Aye.
Board member Sanders.
Aye.
Board member Schulke.
Aye.
Board Member Stark,
Aye.
Board Member Terrell,
Aye.
Board Member White,
Aye.
Board Member Worcester,
Aye, sorry, keyboard wouldn't work.
thank you. Thank you. Chair votes aye and motion passes. All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, we will move on to our next nomination. Our second nomination this evening is the First Baptist Church in Otter Tail County, presented by Ginny Way. Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you, Chair Rulon Miller. As we said, this is the First Baptist Church in Battle Lake, Otter Tail County. Rolf T. Anderson is the author. The First Church of Battle Lake is located at 101 West Summit Street in the community of Battle Lake, a city in west central Minnesota with a population of approximately 900. Here we see a map of Battle Lake. The church location is indicated with the white arrow. The First Baptist Church was organized in June 5th of 1883 by 6 founding members. W.H. Kephart was named the first pastor of the congregation on July 31st. A building committee was appointed in 1893 and authorized to pay architect William Dunnell of the Minneapolis firm Dunnell & Elliott his $40 fee for the plans and specifications of the church. The church was constructed later that year, again 1893, and is clad with a combination of clapboard siding and wood shingles, and it is a distinct local example of the Gothic Revival style. At left is the north elevation, camera facing south. At right is a photo of the church in 1895. The First Baptist Church is a one-story rectangular building measuring 56 feet long and 22 feet wide. The 8 courses of brick, seen at the bottom, were added to the original stone foundation in 1921 when the building was raised to accommodate the installation of a full basement in order to provide space for a dining hall, kitchen, and for use by the Sunday school. At left is the east elevation of the church, camera facing west. At right is the south elevation, camera facing north. 2 additions have been added to the west elevation of the church. In circa 1912, a 6-foot-long, 16-foot-wide addition was built and centered on the west elevation to provide space for a baptistry. In 1921, the addition was extended to the north by 3 feet, bringing it flush with the north sidewall of the building. The additions were covered by a combination of gable roof and a shed roof with a lesser slope and were carefully positioned within the projecting Gothic arch formed by the main roof, so the design of the original building was minimally impacted. At left is the upper portion of the east elevation. I'm sorry, those aren't right. At left is the rear elevation and facade of the building, camera facing southwest, and at right is the rear elevation, camera facing south. Features of the Gothic Revival style include the steep gable roofs, towers with spires, pointed arched windows, decorative barge boards, and window tracery. High-style versions are generally constructed in masonry, while frame buildings, such as the First Baptist Church, are usually more straightforward and often classified as Carpenter Gothic. First Baptist Church also has aspects of the shingle style. This church features Gothic arches that frame the windows as well as the entrance. Segmental window hoods imitate masonry, a design feature of the Carpenter Gothic. Instead of barge boards, Dunnell's distinctive design incorporates a large segmental Gothic arch in the projecting mass of the roof structure on the east and west elevations. At left is the upper portion of the east elevation, camera facing west. At right is a detail of the main entrance door, camera facing south. The tower is particularly inventive, the design of which in part takes on the form of a dormer, resulting in a scale appropriate to the size of the building. The belfry also features Gothic arches. Dunnell's attention to detail extends to both the design of the water table and the elaborate signboard, as well as the finial on top of the tower. His use of clapboard siding as well as shingles enlivens the wall surfaces and the overall design. The extensive use of wood shingles on the walls, gables, and tower also represents a characteristic to the shingle style. At left, we see a close-up of the tower, camera facing southeast. At right is the church circa 1908. Note the open belfry. Right here. Warren Barnes Dunnell was born in Norway, Maine on August 23, 1851. In 1863, the family moved to Winona, Minnesota. Warren Dunnell attended the University of Minnesota in 1869 and later transferred to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Throughout his career, Dunnell's practice focused on public buildings and institutions, as well as churches, schools, and hospitals. Dunnell is best known as the architect of several of the state's largest institutions, including the Fergus Falls State Hospital, the State School for Dependent and Neglected Children, the Minnesota Soldiers Home, and the State Training School, all of which are listed properties. He died in Minneapolis in 1931. At left is a view of the sanctuary toward the east end with the doors to the entry at left and doors to the vestibule at right, camera facing east. At right is the entry with doors to the sanctuary at right and a door to the vestibule at left, camera facing southwest. The extant fiberboard was installed on the walls and ceiling of most of the entry, vestibule, and sanctuary in 1921, when the exterior work has taken place. The fiberboard was installed as a wainscot, and above the wainscot was a fiberboard. The fiberboard simulates stone blocks. In 1962, the chancel was enlarged slightly by expanding into the 1912 addition. A door on the left side of the recess leads to the addition, which now consists of a hallway and stairway leading to the rear entrance. At left is a view into the sanctuary from the vestibule, camera facing west. At right, a view of the sanctuary toward the west end, camera facing west. The basement contains one large room for meeting and dining, as well as a kitchen, space for a furnace, and a restroom. The original stone foundation walls are visible, as are the brick walls placed atop the foundation when the building was raised. At left is the basement and stairway to the main entry at right, camera facing southeast. At right is the basement dining hall with a view of the kitchen, camera facing southwest. The period of significance for this property is 1893, the date of construction. The level of significance is local. The National Register criterion is C, and the area of significance is architecture. The period of significance corresponds with the date of the original construction. It does not include the date of the additions because they were not constructed in the Gothic style. The First Baptist Church meets National Register criterion consider A for religious properties because the property derives its significance from its architectural distinction. Designed by a renowned architect and constructed in 1893, the First Baptist Church of Battle Lake is a distinctive local example of the Gothic Revival style. For this reason, it is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. There is no correspondence related to this nomination. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, we have a few folks who will be speaking, starting with, I believe there's a crew from Battle Lake, and Rolf, speak up if you'd like to speak first. Otherwise, I'll invite them to speak if they're ready.
They can go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure what name the group is under. I saw them at the start of the meeting. Maybe if they could put their video back on.
Yeah, there's one group on standby. I wonder if that's our Battle Lake group.
Chair Rula Miller, I just unmuted them. I don't know if that helps, but they're still listed, but I'm not seeing.
Okay, it's the blue square. That's what it is.
I wonder
Okay.
if they're having any technical.
Well, Ralph, would you like to start, and then when they get the camera working?
Sure. Why don't we do that, and hopefully they'll connect too, because I know they'd like to make some remarks. Well, I wanted to mention that I thought this nomination was a very rare opportunity to research a 19th century building for which so much primary documentation exists. It was amazing enough to find some original architectural drawings, but added to that were minutes of the building committee, correspondence, and even canceled checks dating from 1893. I think there was an ability to tell this story in an unusually complete manner, tracing the construction of this late 19th century building, down to detailed information about so many individuals who were involved in this construction, who we then can credit for their involvement, and we often don't have that chance. And of course, as Jenny mentioned, I think of particular interest was Warren Donnell's fee for $40. We tend not to know what these fees might be, but even for 1893, that seems on the modest side for such a well-known architect. But also, this nomination is better for the fact that it involves a building in Otter Tail County, and I can always rely on Chris Schulke's Otter Tail County Historical Society and his staff for help. In this case, Kathy Evevall was very helpful in tracking down various details about this building, all of which make this nomination much better. So again, thank you to Chris and Kathy for the help that you always provide. But I also wanted to thank folks in Battle Lake, particularly if we can't connect with them tonight. But I'll begin by first remarking that I always say, and I've said this to the board before, I like working on nominations in small towns. It's always a very nice experience. There's just a certain feel that's very appealing. You meet interesting people with long connections to the community. And folks are always very helpful and interesting. It feels like for a short period of time, you become part of their community. And the folks who I'm sure are with us in Battle Lake are Reba Gillian, my main contact throughout this project, who was extremely helpful arranging everything I might need throughout the course of the project. Another person in the room with her is Carrie, a local historian with deep roots in the community. She maintains a collection of documentation about Battle Lake and the surrounding area, and she too was very helpful in providing information. And another person in the room there in Battle Lake was Jay Johnson. He is the great-grandson of J.A. Kolauer, who's mentioned throughout the nomination as an early settler, as a member of the church's building committee, who played a very important role in the construction of the church. It was really invaluable to interview Jay with all his family documentation. Jay lives just a block away from the church in the Prospect House, which is the family inn and residence in 19th century inn and current residence in Battle Lake. So that property, in fact, is the one property in Battle Lake that has been listed in the National Register. So we hope soon there will be a second property listed as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Any action from the First Baptist Church, John or Shippo staff? I don't know if you've been trying to see if you can get them to join in another way.
I do have them unmuted, but I can't seem to hear them, unfortunately.
Well, I suppose we'll have to move along, and we'll keep an eye on if they are able to jump back in. So at this point, were there any other members of the public that are here and would like to make a comment? Don't see any other hands. All right. So we'll close the public comment period. And in order for the board to discuss, is there a motion regarding this nomination?
This is Board Member Gladhill. I'll make a motion to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination of the First Baptist Church of Battle Lake for listing in the National Register of Historic Places.
Beautiful. Is there a second?
Board Member
Board
Stark.
Member Anderson,
Oh,
Stark Anderson, Board Member Stark Anderson.
I like that.
Seconds.
I'll third it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Anderson for the second. Is that okay?
That's okay.
I
Works
heard
for
her.
me.
Okay, all right, thank you. And is there any discussion regarding this nomination? Board Member Terrell.
Hey, Chair, I just wanted to say it was an excellent nomination, and I really appreciated, Rolf, what you were saying about the amount of detail that you were able to, and the documents that you were able to draw upon for this nomination. I was curious, were you able to find any images of the interior of the building before the fiberboard went up? I was just kind of curious what the sanctuary looked like before that.
You know, I was not, which was something I looked for. In fact, the only photo I did find shortly after I suspect the fiberboard was installed was a photo taken at a funeral. So, but there are a couple wall surfaces that that weren't covered with the with that fiberboard, mainly in the entryway. And from what survives of that, I think there was very likely a wood beadboard wainscot and then plaster above.
Thank you.
Thank
Board
you.
Member Stark.
Yeah, nice job, Ralph, on this. The congregation really needs to be commended for taking good care of this building. It just looks beautiful.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a comment that thank you. That when the congregation embarked on this project, first in the form of a property evaluation and then the nomination, they were interested first and foremost about whether their building was, indeed warranted historic designation. That's as far as they brought their discussions. At that point, they weren't aware until we were underway in the nomination process that once they're on the National Register, that legacy money would be available to them to help maintain the building. And I think that will be very important to them going forward. But as you said, it's they've done a remarkable job keeping this building so original. It's you almost think any building would have changed much more than this would has over these 130 years.
I do have a question for you, Ralph, because you said there is such a great archive of material of how this was put together. Was there a floor plan that you could include in this? I'm curious about the front entryway with the steps changed probably after it was originally done, but
yeah, I mean, there were no original floor plans, unfortunately.
Oh.
The original drawings, and I tried to include most of the major items in the back of the nomination. I think there were just a few minor details I didn't include at the back that didn't photograph very well, but there actually weren't any original floor plans, and it was a bit of a mystery to try to figure out how that entrance got reconfigured as once the building got raised up a bit. And I didn't even realize it at first that the entrance had been lowered until I compared two photographs, the 1809 photo with a current photo, where you can suddenly see the whole entrance structure is down a little bit lower to make that a more make the building more easily accessible. But it's just a very small little space that was somehow created there to accommodate that change in the elevation on the interior.
The historic architect in me is looking at that, and someday there may be a need or a requirement to make this an accessible building, and that would be very difficult on a front entry like that with all the steps and everything there. That's why if there was any kind of document or better way to show it, would be the only thing I would see to include it for the record.
You're right. Yeah, that is a good question. I think some access might have to occur through that 1912 edition. Although ironically, during this funeral where we do have a photo, there were complaints that it was very difficult to move the casket into the sanctuary. So this has proved problematic for various reasons over the years.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the board? All right, seeing no hands. No hands. Okay, the motion before the board is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination of the First Baptist Church for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And I will take a vote by roll call, starting with Board Member Anderson.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Lavasser.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Radford.
Aye.
Board Member Sanders.
Aye.
Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Worcester.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. And we will move on to, oh, there was a clap. We will move on to our next nomination for this evening. So our third nomination is the Theodore Ham Brewing Company Historic District in Ramsey County, presented by Ginny Way. Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you, Chair. So as Chair Rulon Miller said, this is the Theodore Ham Brewing Company Historic District in St. Paul, Ramsey County. Lauren Anderson and Shannon Story are the authors from New History. This is the second of our unusual agenda items tonight. Just a brief reminder to the board that the significance of the property has already been defined by the National Park Service. The question before the board revolves around the appropriateness of the boundary and the current integrity of the property. In this presentation, I'll outline the property's changes since 2005 when it was determined eligible, give an overview of the property's history and the communications. The property is coming before the board again because one or more owners are seeking to formally list it. Typically, the withdrawal of an objection or the movement from a determination of eligibility to a formal listing is an administrative change. However, in this case, the boundary adjustment requires board review. The Theodore Ham Brewing Company Historic District is located along East Minnehaha and Rainy Avenues between Payne Avenue and Stroh Drive in Dayton's Bluff neighborhood of St. Paul. In 2005, the district was nominated to the National Register of Historic Places. Due to private property owner objections, the district was not listed in the National Register and instead received a determination of eligibility from the National Park Service. The district was determined eligible under Criterion A as one of the most important breweries to operate in the state of Minnesota, and under Criterion B for its association with the three of the state's most influential businessmen, Theodore Ham, his son William Ham, and his grandson William Ham Jr. The district has a period of significance of 1865 to 1952. At left is an aerial view of the historic district, camera looking northeast. At right is a view of the district in 2005 from the National Register nomination. Here's a map of the 2005 boundary, which can be seen in blue, overlaid on the current proposed boundary, which can be seen in orange. Contributing properties are green, non-contributing additions and resources are red. There is a mistake in the nomination and has been corrected for the National Park Service copy. The carpenter shop, which is building number 9, is indicated in your copy of the nomination as a non-contributing element, a non-contributing building. It should be a contributing structure instead of a non-contributing building. You can see that the additions to building 49 in the yellow box of the administration building in the left corner of the screen cross through the 2005 boundary. Because the National Park Service will not list part of a building, a boundary increase was necessary. We also took the opportunity to reflect current conditions and correct errors in the previous nomination, including tightening the boundaries to remove vacant land at the east and the northwest corner, in accordance with the National Park Service guidance. For selecting boundaries, the district boundaries have also been generally adjusted to better align with current legally recorded parcel boundaries. Changes to the district since 2005 include the demolition of 4 contributing buildings: the Powerhouse, the Stockhouse No. 1, Stockhouse No. 4, and the Advertising Warehouse. At left, we see a map of the district from 2005, and at right, a map from the current documentation. The yellow boxes outline the previous location of non-extant buildings. Additionally, 2 small contributing structures have been demolished, Pump House No. 3 and Pump House No. 5. Due to the alterations since 2005, the carpenter shop is now considered a historic structure rather than a historic building, and the Pump House No. 8 has been changed from contributing to non-contributing. One historic structure mistakenly excluded from the 2005 nomination, the Oil House, has been added to the district documentation as a contributing structure. At left is a view of the carpenter shop and retaining wall, camera looking east. At right, from left to right, is a view of the racking room, wash house, and carpenter shop, camera looking northeast. When it was established in 1865, the brewery was located outside the city limits and the surrounding area was sparsely settled. A grain mill called the Brainerd Mill was in operation just north of the brewery, where the power plant is now located. And in circa 1870, Ham purchased a controlling interest in the mill. On left, from left to right, we see the Stockhouse No. 3, Stockhouse No. 2, laboratory and wort cooler, hop storage, and brew house, camera facing southeast. On right, again from left to right, is a view of the grain dryer, brew house, grit storage, and racking room, camera looking northeast. Benefiting from its excellent location, the brewery grew to become the largest brewery in Minnesota and eventually included approximately 34 acres and over 1.3 million square feet of total building area. The progressive attitude of the brewery's leadership ensured that the operation remained on the cutting edge, greatly stimulating business, but resulting in substantive modernizations to the physical plant, which repeatedly altered its appearance. Over the years, there were 5 major expansions to the original brewery, each of which added new buildings, demolished others, and modernized and added onto existing buildings. At left is a view of the administration building, camera facing northeast. At right is a view of the electric and pipe shop and the blacksmith machine and paint shops, camera looking southwest. The first major expansion, which occurred in the 1880s, expanded the brewery north of Minnehaha. The second major expansion, which occurred in the 1890s, demolished almost all existing buildings. New construction featured Romanesque revival facades of red sandstone and brick and gave the brewery a grand image and featured an impressive new brewery complex. At left is a view of the brewery circa 1900. At right is the grain dryer, brew house, grit storage, hop storage, laboratory wort cooler, Stockhouse No. 2, and Stockhouse No. 3, camera facing southeast. The third major expansion, which occurred between 1900 and 1911, reflected the shift in architectural fashions after the Victorian era and featured simpler, more practical buildings that were articulated with details that emphasized the structure of the building. At left is a view of the historic district looking west. At right, again, is a view of the wash house, racking room, grit storage, new brew house, and Stockhouse No. 3, camera looking west. Due to the economic conditions and prohibition, the fourth major expansion did not occur until the 1930s, when the brewery was modernized and enlarged to meet new post-repeal demands. At left is a view of the bottling house, camera looking north. At right is a view of the brewing complex looking east on Minnehaha Avenue in 1934. The fifth major expansion followed the end of World War II, when increased demand for beer prompted an extensive building program. Glass block, concrete bands, and stack bond brick accents were added to the existing architectural vocabulary established earlier. while decorative brickwork such as corbelling largely disappeared. This was the last period of expansion that occurred during the period of significance, but the brewery continued to evolve through the 1970s. At left is a view of the grit storage building, the brew house, the hop storage, and the laboratory in 1946. At right is a view of the warehouse number 3, camera looking northwest. The Ham Brewery property is significant under Criterion A in the area of industry and Criterion B for its association with Theodore Ham, William Ham Sr., and William Ham Jr. Today, the district retains sufficient integrity to convey that historic significance as the production complex of the Theodore Ham Brewing Company within the 1865 to 1952 period of significance. There are 4 pieces of correspondence related to this property. A letter from Anthony Osland of Ludwig, Dresden and Boland, PA, included formal objections to the proposed listing of the Ham Brewery complex in the National Register of Historic Places. The objecting owners included Clapp Investments LLC, 688 Minnehaha Management LLC, 700 Fish LLC, and 704 Minnehaha LLC. These objections, in addition to standing objections of Everest LLC and HCA Building Company, mean that all private owners in the district have objected to listing. The nomination will instead be forwarded to the National Park Service for determination of eligibility instead of formal listing in keeping with the regulations should the board forward the nomination. The second letter is from Nicole Newton, the Executive Director of the St. Paul Housing and Redevelopment Authority. The letter clarifies communication about the listing between the city and current and future property owners and goes on to say, quote, Planning and Economic Development Preservation staff strongly support the application and have confirmed the Ham Brewing Company District meets the requirements to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places, end quote. The third piece of correspondence is from Barbara Bazat, who writes in support of the district. The fourth and final piece of correspondence from Christine Boulware, Historic Preservation Specialist at the City of St. Paul, writes that at their February 10th, 2025 meeting, quote, the Historic Preservation Commission voted unanimously to support the nomination of the Theodore Ham Brewing Company Historic District for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, end quote. That's all from me. Thank you, Chair Rulon Miller.
Thank you, Jenny. I would like to open it up for the public comment period, and I see that Ashley has indicated an interest in speaking. So Ashley, if you're here, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Everybody hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Board Chair Rulon Miller, board members and staff. My name is Ashley Bisner. I'm with JP Vang Partners. We are the tentative developer on this project from the City of St. Paul. And I thank you for this opportunity to comment on this HAMS project. I'd first of all like to thank staff of the State Historic Preservation Office for their diligent work on this nomination, and also thank the board for your consideration of the National Register of Historic Places. For the Theodore Ham Brewing Company Historic District, as a tentative developer of the Ham's Brewing property, JB Vang is very honored to be trusted with the historic reuse of this legendary part of St. Paul's history. Having played an iconic role in the development of St. Paul beginning in 1865, the National Register listing of the former brewery complex is not only long overdue, it is a critical milestone in the preservation, development, and reuse of this site. JB Vang's development proposal will preserve the significant brewery buildings and adapt their uses to serve our community. The redevelopment project will create artist-style loft housing, a commercial marketplace, affordable family-friendly housing, and both indoor and outdoor community gathering spaces. All of these uses will bring vitality and energy to this currently underutilized site. The project will also bring a much-needed bicycle and pedestrian connection to the adjacent Sweet Hollow Park and the Bruce Bento Regional Trail. All of these important community benefits will only be possible through the use of historic tax credits that would be unlocked by the listing of the brewery complex to the National Register. Many of these historic buildings have been vacant for nearly 30 years, And we are very excited to help to return this site to a thriving, bustling, and valued commercial and residential center of the activity of St. Paul's East Side. Thank you again for your review of this nomination.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? I do not see any hands and I don't see anybody in the chat. So if not, the public comment period will now close. And in order for the board to discuss, may I have a nomination regarding this, or motion regarding this nomination?
Board member
Worcester.
Anderson or whoever.
Yeah, board member Worcester, did you have a comment or?
No, I was going to make the motion, but go ahead, Kristen, if you want to. Yeah, you go ahead and I'll just second it. That's fine.
Okay, great. I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for a listing in the National Register of Historic Places.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Board member Worcester seconds.
Thank you. Any comments from the board regarding this nomination? Board member Worcester.
Okay, now I'll make a comment. I am 100% behind this. I don't think a lot of people in the state really understand or appreciate the importance that the brewing industry played in the development of industry in this state. And it's been a half a century since the kind of the last of the big regional breweries died out. And so it's nice to see that this particular complex is going to be adapted for reuse. If you see a great example of adapted reuse, go up to Marshall Street and take a look at the old Greenbelt Brewery and what they did up there. It's fantastic. And considering that building at one time was empty and full of nothing but pigeon dung, it was seriously. I've been in there. 1992, I was in there. It was pretty bad. I think this is fantastic, and I cannot say enough for how I'm glad to see this happening.
Thank you, board member Stark.
There you go on mute. I'd like to say they have a great ad campaign. It's just water. As a kid, though, I sang the songs, Land of Sky Blue Waters. It's good to see this building being reused and putting to a good purpose. There are a couple little minor things that I saw written in there, and my 91-year-old father-in-law reminded me of that today. He was born the first day after Prohibition ended, which was December 6th. Prohibition ended on December 5th, 1933, and it listed in here as April 17th. I'll send that to you, Ginny. It's on page 45. The other thing, there was a comment that one of the things that was demolished was a 1900, and then it was a foot high elevator. I don't believe there was something that was 130 stories or plus high there. So it was probably 1900 the year or whatever it was, but there's an error with that.
Thank you. Yes, please send those and I'll be happy to correct them.
Thank you, board member Anderson.
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much, and I agree with John that it's a super important thing to be listed. I was sad to miss Doug Hoverson's book, Land of Amber Waters, in the bibliography. And even if the authors didn't use it, I think, shortly after, when this is done, then other people will use this for reference. And I think it's really important to have Doug's book listed. And with the help of that book, I think some of the things about early brewing history in the Twin Cities, Section 8, page 37, could be cleaned up a little bit. I'll just mention one thing. It only talks about Orth in 1850 in Minneapolis, and Glick's was super important and lasted a long time. It did not merge to be the Minneapolis Brewing Company. So that and some of the things in the St. Paul section could be clarified and could be improved a little bit, and certainly referring to Hoverson's book would be a helpful thing for that.
Thank you, Board Member Anderson. Generally, we were staying away from changing Section 8 because the National Park Service has already approved that language, but we will certainly take a look at those additions and corrections and see if there's anything that we can do without feeling like we tipped that line. But absolutely, thank you.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Yeah, the bibliography is certainly something we can do.
Good.
Chair Rulon Miller, I've said this before in the past. One of the things that I've appreciated in my several terms here on the board is the vast history knowledge that comes through on all of these nominations. This is really a great piece of history for the city of St. Paul and Minnesota. It's quite a narrative. So I really appreciate, again, being able to review all of these nominations. So, and especially this one, although I didn't like Ham's beer, but anyway.
Well, you know who did like Ham's beer? It was Dewey the horse. If anybody remembers that tidbit from the nominee, yes, Remember Terrell. He was the last horse. I'm guessing it was a boy. He only drank Ham's beer. And I thought that was adorable. I don't know if it's true, but it made it in. Thank you. Are there any other comments regarding this nomination? Board Member Radford.
Yeah, I'm just really glad to see this finally come forward as a nomination officially to get through. I used to live on the east side, so it would be absolutely wonderful to get this up and running in actually an occupied building. So thank you for that. And otherwise, I think my only comment on the nomination itself was just had to do with some of the dates that changes occurred and just being consistent when we list them in the title of the heading of each building and then in the narrative below. But otherwise, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Radford. I know that you have sent your comments. I have not had an opportunity to look at them. If that's in there, great. And if not, I will make sure to note that.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, the motion before the board is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And we will vote starting with Board Member Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Aye.
Board Member Lavasser.
Aye.
Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Radford.
Aye.
Board Member Sanders. I think you said aye, but I didn't hear you. You're still on mute. Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, there. Okay. All right. Board Member Sanders votes aye. Board Member Schulke.
Board Member Schulke from the land of sky blue waters votes yes.
Thank you. All right. Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Worcester.
Board Member Worcester, who wrote his master's thesis on the grain company, enthusiastically votes aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. All right. Our fourth nomination this evening is the Ness Lutheran Church and Cemetery in Meeker County, presented by Ginny Way. Ginny.
Thank you, Chair Rulon Miller. As we said, this is the Ness Lutheran Church and Cemetery in Litchfield, Meeker County. Alson Tovas is the author. He is a volunteer with the Ness Church Preservation Foundation and the Ness Cemetery Association. Alson, forgive me if I said your last name incorrectly.
Paves, but that's okay.
Thank you. The Ness Church and Cemetery is located southwest of Litchfield, Minnesota, a small town approximately 80 miles west of St. Paul. The property consists of approximately 2 acres of a larger 42-acre parcel owned by Ness Church. The remaining 40 acres are used for agricultural purposes as they were historically. At right, we see a map of the Ness Church proposed nomination boundary, indicated in red, and at left is an aerial view of most of the property in 1970. Meeker County, where Ness Church is located, was established in 1856 and named after Franklin Meeker, a prominent figure in the area's early development. The county settlement began in earnest in the 1850s, driven by the promise of fertile land and abundant natural resources. The first Norwegian farmers arrived in the spring of 1856 from Rock County, Wisconsin, including Ole N. Ness. In 1857, others immigrated directly from Norway, primarily from the Nisben in the district of Hallingdal, and I'm sure I got those wrong too. At left is the At left is the Ness Church, primary facade, camera facing east. At right is the Ness Cemetery, camera facing southeast. The initial congregation, St. Jonas Lutheran Congregation, met initially in homes. In October of 1861, the all-male 25-member congregation reorganized as the Ness Norwegian Lutheran Congregation of Meeker County and began meeting in the upper granary of the Ole Ness farmhouse. Ness Church, as it's commonly called, used this facility from 1862 to 1874. The building was moved onto the Ness Church property in 2001. At left is a view of the Ole Ness farmhouse, west facade and south elevation, camera facing northeast. At right is the original worship space on the second floor of the farmhouse, camera facing north. In 1864, the congregation purchased 40 acres of land from Hendrik Halverson for $100. The property already included a Ness cemetery, which had its first interment in 1857. The church was built in the Carpenter Gothic style, influenced by examples from Ness community in Norway and from other local churches such as the Richard Upton's Episcopal Church in Litchfield. At left is the Ness Church south elevation, camera facing north. At right is the church's east and north elevations, camera facing southwest. Ness Church was constructed in the simplified basilica typology. The typology was published in 1863 journal about the recently constructed Holden Church in Goodhue County, Minnesota, noting that a, quote, proper plan in our old Norwegian ecclesiastical style, end quote, had finally been realized in the United States. The journal also published a floor plan for the building with the intention of providing building patterns for other congregations. Ness Church exhibits most of the characteristics described in the article, making it a distinctive local example of the style, including the hierarchy of volumes seen as distinguishable parts, the altar surrounded by a railing and kneelers, and an arched ceiling used to mark the transition from the nave to the choir. At left is the floor plan illustrating the main features of early Norwegian American church architecture in the upper Midwest from 1850 to 1870. At right is the interior of Ness Church Sanctuary, camera facing east. The church building has no known architect, but was instead designed and constructed by members of the congregation. The interior was completed in 1868 under the direction of the first dedicated pastor, T.H. Dahl. Current interior wall and ceiling finishes were installed after the period of significance in order and mimic the 1921 finishes. The elaborate altar work, entitled See Jesus Receiving the Sinner, was commissioned in 1896 and completed by Sarah Ragland, a well-known Minneapolis architect, in 1898. At left is a view of the sanctuary and balcony, camera facing northwest. At right, an interior detail of the altar and kneeler, with a view of the painting, camera facing east. In 1890, Ness Church became part of the United Church and of the Norwegian Lutheran Church of America under the Union. In 1890, Ness Church became part of the United Church, and then part of the Norwegian Lutheran Church of America after its union in 1917. The synod name changed in 1946 to the Evangelical Lutheran Church. At left is a view of the rear room, formerly the sacristy, camera facing north. At center is a view of the balcony, camera facing southwest. At right is the southwest stair addition, camera facing southeast. In 1947, a basement was constructed under the existing church, along with 2 stair additions that allow interior access to the fellowship hall and kitchen below. At left is a view of the basement, camera facing southeast. At right is another view of the basement from the opposite direction, camera facing northwest. The Norwegian Lutheran tradition of church planting is defined as, quote, establishing a new gathering of believers around the world, around word and sacrament with the intent of forming a sustainable congregation, end quote. When Norwegian farmers moved to Litchfield in 1858, they organized what would become Ness Church and worked to plant Norwegian Lutheran churches in the surrounding areas. As the first church in Meeker County, Ness Church became the mother church of roughly 25 congregations. At left is a Ness Church planting illustration from the Minnesota Historical Society Monument Dedication Service pamphlet. At right is a view of the church's structural detail visible through the basement ceiling, camera facing up. In the late 19th century, state monuments were placed at locations significant to the U.S.-Dakota War, including Ness Cemetery. Of the 23 monuments constructed, many took the form of a stone obelisk and about half of them were constructed within cemeteries. The Ness Monument was unveiled September 13, 1878 at 2 p.m. Governor Alexander Ramsey and more than 1,000 spectators were said to have attended the unveiling. The Ness Monument marks the mass grave for the first 5 white victims of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. At left is a 1909 photograph of Ness Monument. At right is a memorial and mass grave, camera facing northeast. After expulsion, some Dakotas returned to Minnesota in the early 20th century, forming the federally recognized communities at Upper Sioux, Lower Sioux, Shakopee, and Prairie Island. With the sesquicentennial of the U.S.-Dakota War in 2012, reconciliation and healing events were held in Minnesota, including the Dakota We Gather Together as One conference held at the Ness Memorial at Ness Church, in which descendants of some families in the Dakota diaspora returned to Minnesota for the first time. More than 300 participants participated in the event, including the wiping of the tears ritual. At left is the laying of the wreath ceremony. At center is the circle dance of unity. At right is the wiping of the tears ceremony. The Ness Church congregation voted to disband in 1964 after 110 years serving the community. This decision followed the loss of members due to consolidation of small farms and farmers moving to larger urban areas. When the congregation disbanded, the church and its contents were left to the Ness Memorial Cemetery Association. At left is the Ness Church and Cemetery Gate, camera facing southeast. At right is the church on September 11, 1942. The period of significance for this property is 1857 to 1964. The level of significance is local. The National Register criteria are A and C. The areas of significance are ethnic heritage, Norwegian, exploration and settlement, and architecture. The period of significance for the Ness Lutheran Church and Cemetery begins in 1857 with the first internment on the property and ends in 1964 when the congregation formally disbanded. The Ness property meets criteria consideration A, religious properties, because it derives its significance from both its historical and architectural importance. The Ness Church and Cemetery is historically significant under National Register Criterion A in the areas of exploration, settlement, and ethnic history Norwegian. And it is significant for its ability to represent an important aspect of the Norwegian Lutheran immigrant experience. The construction of the church was a direct result of the Norwegian immigrant settlement in Meeker County, specifically near Litchfield. The descendants of the original founders continued to use the church and cemetery as a place of gathering and celebration, as well as a final resting place. During its active years, the church planted more than 25 other Norwegian Lutheran congregations. The Ness Monument marks the resting place of the first 5 white victims of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862, one of the most significant and pivotal moments in the early Meeker County history. For these reasons, the Ness Lutheran Church and Cemetery is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. There is no correspondence related to this nomination. Thank you, Chair Rulon Miller.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, I do see one hand up by Sean Ryan. Sean, if you're here, you're welcome to speak on behalf of this nomination. So Sean, I don't hear, if you're able to unmute and then put your video on, that would be great. I'm going to jump over to the other hand that's up. Alson Tobas, if I'm mispronouncing your name, please correct me. You have the floor.
Elson,
Thank you.
Elson Taves. It rhymes with slaves and caves and raves. I'll tell you that story sometime. Good evening. Dave Lindberg, the president of the Ness Preservation Foundation, is also on the call with us tonight. Unfortunately, Laura Heidemann, the president of the Ness Cemetery Association Board, was not able to join us. I'm Elson Taves, and I serve on both of these and as a sexton of the cemetery. I hope you can sense our excitement at arriving at this step in the process to provide national historic recognition to the Ness Church and Cemetery. It's been quite a journey, identifying forms, researching history, and documenting it for your consideration. Thanks to Jenny Way and others in the State of Minnesota office for advice in producing the final nomination document after many revisions. The grounds are 5 acres of a 43-acre farm site southwest of Litchfield, Minnesota. It is tree-lined with landscape carefully maintained. 358 burials have been recorded from an infant in March of 1858 to an adult in May of 2024. An obelisk memorializes the first 5 victims of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. The Carpenter Gothic Church was built in 1874 with 2 outhouses and a basement. A basement with archives, fellowship hall, kitchen, utility room, and bathroom have been added. A 150-year celebration of the building was held in November 2024 with a worship service followed by a fellowship luncheon. The congregation was founded as St. Johannes Church and later renamed Ness in memory of the church in Norway from which the founders emigrated. It grew and then waned with many confirmations, weddings, funerals, worship services, Sunday schools, women's missionary guilds, and youth leagues. Ness Lutheran became a mother church, helping to start more than 20 churches in the surrounding area. In December 1968, the congregation voted to disband, and the assets were transferred to the Ness Cemetery Association Board and the Ness Preservation Foundation. These boards continue to meet several times per year and work tirelessly to protect and preserve the site. Weddings, funerals, Nordic Fest, periodic worship services continue to this day. Historic site recognition assists us as we continue protecting and preserving this valuable historic community resource. Thank you for your consideration. We look forward to a positive outcome, and then I will turn it over to David Lindberg, the president of the foundation.
Thank you. David, I don't see your hand up. Hopefully you're here. And oh, there you are. Okay, go ahead. You'll have to unmute. I see you, but click on the mute button at the bottom. You see that. And maybe John or Amy, can you unmute David?
Okay, David, you're unmuted. You should be able to go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
we
got
can.
you.
I'm Dave Lindberg. I'm the president of the Ness Preservation Foundation. I'm getting a feedback here. Uh,
You sound clear to me.
okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I'm the president of the Nest Preservation Foundation, and I'd like to add just a few words from what Olson said. I was born in Litchfield, and went to college, left when I went to college, and I came back in '79, and I've been involved in the Nest Preservation Board for about the last 25 years. Nest Church has always been a landmark and religious and social gathering place since it was built. As a member of the Preservation Foundation, I've had the privilege of meeting many members, second and third generations of Nest Church. They all reminisce about their memories and times at Nest. They talk about the history of Nest and the gatherings, and at the gatherings, they'll sit for hours and visit with old friends. In the cemetery, veterans from the Civil War, World War I, II, and Korea. We've got one grave marker for a veteran who was buried at sea, and we have another World War veteran buried in an unmarked grave, which we're planning to place a military marker on. Also in the cemetery is located the Acton Monument, which on September 19, 1878 was dedicated in memory of the first 5 settlers killed in the Dakota War. On August 19, 2012, which was the 150th anniversary of the Dakota War, we had a ceremony of healing led by representatives of the Dakota people for past and healing on the future. On May 18th, 2016, at the Nest Nordic Festival, Adam Sergigo, a member of the Upper Sioux congregation, give a presentation on personal family experiences from the U.S. Dakota War and the history and significance of the Indian drum. Located also on his original home of Holy Nest, which date back to the 1860s. This building is where the original congregation was formed. It was used as a house, granary, and storage shed, and now stands close to as the original was in 1860. Those were just a few examples which we do and we try to do every year to keep our history alive and involved with the community. And like also mentioned, we're also open for family events, weddings, and funerals. And I just got to reiterate the amount of history at Nest and the surrounding areas, and which should be preserved and protected by the future generation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Sean, your hand is still up. If you're able to speak, you can unmute. If not, I might just have to move on. And Alston, your hand is still up. Did you have an additional comment to make? No, you can shake your head. Okay, hand is down. Okay, any other comments from the public? I don't see. If that's the case, the public comment period is now closed. In order for us to discuss this nomination, is there a motion from the board?
This is John Stark. I'd like to make a motion to recommend that Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Board Member Olson. I'll second.
Thank you, Board Member Olson. All right, any comments from the board? Board Member Olson?
As a member of Norwegian Lutheran Church in southeastern Minnesota that has adjacent farmland, I'm curious if the 40 acres next to your site is generating revenue through rental for the preservation of your site.
It is indeed. It is leased and it is farmed, and we get a rebate every year. Thanks for asking the question.
Thank you, Board Member Olson. So we're gonna go with Sanders, Worcester, Stark, Terrell. Start with Sanders.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I have some concerns about the Dakota history and Dakota culture mentioned under the U.S. and Dakota War. The language of the word Minnesota, they have it mean clear and reflection of a sky. It really means milky, cloudy. The way it was explained to me, the word for Dakota word for clear is medeza, and then for sort of muddy would be shota. So it's the incorrect translation of that word.
I'm sorry, Board Member Sanders, I hate to interrupt you, but can you give me the correct translation of that so that I can make the appropriate change?
It means cloudy, milky white. It's clear but translucent, kind of like milk.
Got
That's
it.
the way it was explained to me.
Perfect. Thank you. I won't put milk.
Yeah. Also, they list different dialect sections, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota. And under Nakota, they have the Tetuan, and they are the Lakota. And then the Ihinktawan and Hinktawan Na are the in dialect.
Thank you, Board Member Sanders. Jenny,
Well,
I trust that you'll.
I'm not done.
Oh, still more. Okay, go ahead.
Keep going. And the history where it suggests that the Dakota were pushed out of northern Minnesota, there's debate on that. And certainly, I think Gary Clayton Anderson has written that they were sort of, as my understanding of it, they were really already moving south, moving towards the buffalo herds and the English traders in the southern part of the state. And so they weren't just pushed out by the Ojibwe.
Thank you very much. Board Member Sanders, if you don't mind, I might revise this document and send you that section for re-review, if that's okay with you.
Yep, sure is. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sanders. Anything else to share? Good, okay. All right. Worcester, Stark, and then Terrell. So Worcester, go ahead.
So my only question also dealt with the Dakota section. Just I want to verify that U.S. Dakota War of 1862 is the preferred terminology right now. It is. That was my only one question. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member. And I think Board Member Terrell was nodding her head, but Ginny, you'll confirm that. Board Member Stark.
Just a couple minor questions. I don't think there's any mention of what was originally on the walls inside. There's the non-historic tin that was talked about. Was it plaster underneath or was it always tin?
I will review my notes. There were 3 transitions of interior wall material, and I will review my notes for that and make sure that that's accurately documented.
Since it said non-historic, it'd be nice to know what was originally there. And then cemetery-wise, since it's an active cemetery still being used, is there any restrictions being on the National Register? I don't think there is from my experience, but.
There are not, no.
Okay, that's good. And the Nest Farmhouse, it doesn't mention where that came from, and just out of curiosity, was it a cornfield next door, or is it, where was it? I don't know if that's important to be part of it. It's non-historic now because it's been moved, and didn't follow the procedures that we did with the tugboat.
Dave, are you still there? Can you answer that one?
Go ahead, Allison.
It was moved about, I think my understanding is it was moved about 1.5 miles from its former location, which was a homestead for the Ness family, but I'm not specific about where that exactly was.
Okay. Jenny, is that something that should be noted where it came from, since they were related to the church, even though it's
I can
not?
Yep, I
Okay.
can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Board Member Stark. Board Member Terrell.
I just had a note about the period of significance. It kind of flips back and forth within the nomination from 1857 and 1858. And from what Olson was saying, I think it's tied to the first interment in the cemetery, which in the short history he gave was 1858. So just look for that in the nomination.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Board Member Stark. No more, okay. Any other comments from the board? If not, our motion tonight is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And I will go ahead with a roll call vote, starting with Board Member Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you, Board Member Gladhill.
Aye.
Board Member Lavasser.
Aye.
Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Radford.
Aye.
Board Member Sanders.
Aye. Aye.
Got it. Thank you. Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Worcester. Board Member Worcester, your vote?
My keyboard is not performing well tonight. I tried to say aye and press the button at the same time. Didn't work. So here we go. Aye.
All right, thank you. Chair votes aye, so motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate this. Appreciate the opportunity to present and for your consideration. We look forward to the next step.
Thank you. All right, so our final task for this evening is to move on to our recommendation for removal of a property from the National Register of Historic Places. So our first and only property to be recommended for removal from the National Register of Historic Places is the Ole Carlson House in Dodge County. This item is presented by Ginny Way. Ginny?
Thank you, Chair. As we mentioned, this is the Ole Carlson House in Canisteo Township, Dodge County. According to Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 60.15A1, a property is removed from the National Register of Historic Places when, quote, the property has ceased to meet the criteria for listing in the National Register because the qualities which caused it to be originally listed have been lost or destroyed, end quote. When it was nominated to the National Register in 1982, the 1880 Ole Carlson House was an architecturally significant example of a prosperous Dodge County farmer's residence. The building was demolished sometime between April 2020 and April 2023. While the property technically retains integrity of setting amid the rural landscape, its location, design, workmanship, materials, feeling, and association were lost when the building was demolished. Because it has lost the historic qualities that made it eligible for listing in the property in the National Register, the property must be removed. And at right, we see a photograph from the 1982 National Register nomination. And at left, we see an aerial view from the city's geospatial inventory in 2020. You can see the remnants of the property in the blue box. There is no correspondence. That is it for me.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so there's no correspondence. Is there anybody from the public who's interested in speaking? I don't see any hands. John, do you see anybody?
Nope, no hands up.
Okay. Okay, if that's the case, the public comment period then would be closed. Board members, in order for us to discuss, do we have a nomination regarding, or a motion regarding this nomination?
Board member moves that this, do I use the language off of here or do I have to, is there specific language for removal?
A recommended motion would be to, the full language plus accept the removal of this property.
Okay, then board member Worcester would like to make a motion to recommend that the deputy state historic preservation officer approve the removal of this listing for the National Register of Historic Places. Is that correct?
Accept the removal would be ideal, but you're very close.
Okay, strike removal, go with the rest.
Okay, do we
I'll
have a
get it
second?
eventually.
Board Member Schalke, second.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding this nomination?
Yeah, thanks for saving me, Chris.
As usual. No, that's fine.
Any comments? Okay, seeing none, the motion before the board is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer accept the removal of this property from the National Register of Historic Places. I'll conduct a vote by roll call, starting with Board Member Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Aye.
Board Member Lavasser.
Aye.
Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Radford.
Aye.
Board Member Sanders.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Worcester.
Aye.
Thank you. And chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Do you think we
Okay,
could get
without further-
WebEx to like play taps? Do you think we could get WebEx to play taps or something like that when we have to do something like this?
Man.
You mean when we're
Dirge.
done?
No, like when
Oh.
we have to
Oh,
when
when
we have to
it's
delist
removed.
something.
Yeah.
I'll look into
Um,
multimedia for PowerPoint presentations.
Okay, folks, without further ado, this concludes the presentation of nominations section of our meeting. Are there any other business or items to discuss from the SHPO staff or other board
I would
members?
like to, this is Jenny. I would like to put in a plug to send comments to me in any way you see fit. You can call me and we can go through it page by page. You can scan something, you can send a list. I appreciate those board members that have already submitted their comments. We really appreciate y'all's input, everything from, you know, the major substantive stuff to the editorial details. Thank you. You have 2 weeks, a week from this Friday.
Does that include
Jenny,
the
anybody
case of
else?
Ham's beer, Jenny?
Oh,
I cannot accept any gifts more than $5, Chris,
Okay, all right.
but I appreciate the offer.
Chris, you can get her a pounder. That'll do it.
Jeez. Co-founder.
I don't even know what that means.
big
Chair
bottle.
Roland Miller. Oh, this is Amy Spong. I didn't know if there were going to be any board members that were just had questions about any impacts to SHPO, given things that are happening on the federal level. But if there are some questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer them. You know, all SHPOs are part of the Federal Preservation Program. And the National Register Program and our work here this evening is a foundational program as part of the National Historic Preservation Act. We are federally funded, so we are watching things very closely. We have a lot of federal and state partners who we work with through the Environmental Review Program. The Federal Historic Tax Credit as we all know, is a very important driver for adaptively reusing historic buildings. So, you know, I guess at right now we're tracking things. Our funding was frozen along with everybody else's funding that has been restored. But we're still tracking that, making more frequent drawdowns. It's a reimbursement model. So we've, over the last few years, just with flat funding, we're a year behind in our spending because there's usually been more and more uncertainty in approving the current budget cycle that we're in. So right now we are in federal fiscal year 25, which started on October 1st of last year. We typically, we're under continuing resolution, as you all may know, until March 15th, which isn't uncommon. There's been, the last several years have been a series of continuing resolutions. We typically don't hear that we are getting full funding and what those amounts are until March or April. One of the latest years that I had in my tenure was July. So just a month before the end of the federal fiscal year, we were actually applying for the funds for that federal fiscal year. So maybe a little bit too much detail, but just wanted to share some of that with you. We are hearing from some of our federal agency partners. We're just tracking things, things like travel is being restricted, outreach is being restricted, which is unfortunate because we were working on some statewide programmatic agreements to help kind of streamline Section 106 reviews. And for those agencies that are no longer doing outreach, they're not going out with the public comment period. So it's stalling some of those agreement documents, which are intended to help streamline reviews for both agency and our office. There's a few of us that are going to DC I'm going for our annual National Conference of SHPOs annual meeting, but also it's Preservation Advocacy Week in person. If any of you are interested in doing at-home advocacy or, you know, just kind of education with your representatives, there'll be some talking points that are coming out probably early March or probably end of February. If you're interested, let me know. I can set you up with some talking points. But the main points are there's going to be the Tax Reform Act is coming back on the docket on the federal level, which is going to, so really it's about keeping the federal historic tax credit and improving that. And then also preserving the Historic Preservation Fund, which funds the work of SHPOs and TIPOs. And so those are kind of the two main kind of one-pagers that we'll be getting. So if anyone is interested, it's certainly not a requirement. And I'm always very clear, as a SHPO staff member, we are not advocates, we're not lobbyists, but we do go to the Hill to educate our representatives about the Federal Historic Preservation Program and the work that takes place on the state level. So Board Member Worcester, your hand's up.
Hopefully fairly straightforward question. If, in terms of your total budget there at SHPO, what percentage is federal dollars? What percentage is state dollars? Rough breakdown.
Yeah, it used to be more of a 60% federal, 40% state. But because the last several years our federal funding has been flat, which is really a decrease with inflation. And so it's more 50-50. The state, we did get a boost with this current biennium that we're in the state side to compensate for some of those federal kind of losses, I guess you could say. There was also a reformulation of how, I guess the formula, it's like a tiered formula for what goes to states based on population and structures older than 50 years old, which is really not very accurate because there's also archaeological resources and lots of different variables. But the formula was kind of updated by the Park Service starting in 2023. And so some states lost, some funding there. There was like a readjustment essentially. Any other, Board Member Gladhill, sorry.
Amy, there have been a couple of other federal agencies or past downs from that have particularly been approached with having to comply to some of the executive orders, particularly with regards to DEI and gender ideology. Has there been any attempts to influence any of the programming or elements that we focus on based on those?
Not that I'm aware of, but I think those concerns are there. There has been conversation. There's been a lot of conversation even in the past couple years about permitting reform. And while we don't issue permits, we're kind of that Section 106 and state level review is under that environmental review umbrella. And, NEPA is being discussed, the National Environmental Policy Act, NAGPRA. I think that, I think everyone's just being very cautious that the National Historic Preservation Act is, part of under that umbrella as well. And so I think we'll hear and know a little bit more after the March week in DC when we're there with, a big cohort of SHPOs and our national representatives. Any other questions? Yeah, we'll continue to keep everyone posted. I know it's hard. I've been advising staff to keep doing the good work that we're doing, and that's what we're doing until we hear otherwise.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, John, if you want to join us in DC in your retirement years, that would be very welcome.
Definitely an advocacy somehow.
Thank you, Amy. Anything else from SHPO staff or board members? Thank you. And I'm sure I speak for everyone. We're so grateful for all of your support and the good work that you do for us here in Minnesota and nationally. So thank you. And thanks for opening it up for questions. All right, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Board Member Stark.
All All right, thank you. This concludes the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board meeting.
Good
Thank you,
night.
everybody.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone. Have a great
everybody.
night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.